I remember the cold first, not the pain, not the blood, just the cold biting into my spine as I lay on the storage room floor behind the wedding reception hall, the air thick with spilled champagne and dust, and the fading echo of my cousin Brianna screaming in her wedding dress. My vision kept flickering like a dying bulb, the world sliding in and out of darkness, as if someone was slowly turning down a dimmer switch on my life. I tasted iron in my mouth and felt something hot pooling under my cheek, spreading through the fabric of my dress. I tried to lift my head, but a sharp bolt of agony shot across my skull, and everything spun: the walls, the door, the stained concrete floor, all tilting like I was inside a sinking ship. My fingers twitched against the ground, sticky with blood and shattered glass. I could hear voices outside, muffled laughter, clinking forks. Someone cheering for the newlyweds while I lay there broken and bleeding just a few feet behind them, fighting to stay conscious. I wanted to scream, but only a strained rattle came out of my throat. The moment the door burst open, I thought I was hallucinating. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, slicing across the room and landing directly on my face. A man shouted, but it sounded like he was underwater. "Ma'am, stay with me. Stay with me. Do not close your eyes." Footsteps thundered around me, and someone dropped to their knees beside my body, hands hovering above me, afraid to touch me. Another voice, deeper, steadier, barked into a radio. "We need medics now. This is critical. She's losing blood fast." My eyelids fluttered, and the cold deepened, creeping into my chest, curling around my ribs like a fist. I felt my pulse fading soft and distant, like footsteps moving away down a long hallway. Someone squeezed my hand. "Ma'am, listen to me. You have seconds, do you hear me?" Seconds. My lips trembled, but a whisper forced itself out. It was my cousin. The room tilted again, the flashlight beam sliding away as everything blurred into smears of gold and shadow. I could still see the shape of her wedding dress in my mind, the way the sequins glimmered when she raised her arm right before she brought the bottle down on my shoulder, the way her veil shook when she screamed that I deserved this, that I shouldn't have worn that dress, that I should never have come. A wave of panic surged through me as I tried to tell them what she had done, but my body refused to obey. My throat tightened. My chest burned. I felt like I was falling even though I wasn't moving. The officer shouted again. "She's crashing. Hurry." A flash of memory hit me so hard it felt like another blow to the skull. Brianna locking the door. Brianna pushing me. Brianna grabbing my hair. Brianna yelling that I needed to learn my place. Brianna telling her bridesmaids not to open the door no matter what they heard. Another voice cut in urgent, relentless. "What's your name? Can you tell me your name? Stay awake. Stay awake." I wanted to say Lena Marlowe. I wanted to say I am 31 years old. I wanted to say I have a brother waiting outside. I wanted to say I am not supposed to die on my cousin's wedding day, but all I managed was a faint broken sound. The cold kept climbing higher into my chest, into my throat, into my skull, swallowing me whole. And right before everything went black, I heard the officer whisper almost to himself, "Who did this to you?" And with the last thread of breath I had left, I answered, "My cousin." Long before Brianna Cole beat me bloody on her wedding day, long before the police knelt beside my broken body, begging me to stay conscious. The truth is, this story started years earlier in the quiet corners of family gatherings where smiles were rehearsed and envy hid behind every polite compliment. I grew up believing the Cole family was normal, at least normal enough to pretend the cracks were quirks, not warning signs. My own mother used to tell me, "Lena, you have to let things go. They are family." But when I think back on it now, every holiday, every barbecue, every birthday held tiny moments that added up to the tragedy in that storage room. Brianna and I were only a year apart. Raised almost like sisters, our mothers close our childhoods intertwined. But while I was the quiet, bookish one, she was the golden girl. Loud, charismatic, adored, spoiled, and accustomed to getting exactly what she wanted. The trouble began when we turned teenagers. I grew taller, more confident, my hair thicker, my features sharper, and Brianna would study my face with this strange tightening around her eyes, like beauty was a limited resource, and I was stealing her share. At family dinners, she would comment on my clothes in that sweet poison voice. "That's brave of you to wear something like that," or "I could never pull that off, but good for you." Her mother Veronica fed the fire, whispering things like, "Lena is too proud of herself," or "She needs to stop drawing attention," as if existing in my own skin was a threat. My mother always tried to diffuse it, brushing my hair behind my ear and saying, "Lena, ignore them. They do not mean it." But the Coles did mean it. They always meant it. Every achievement of mine became an opportunity for Brianna to compete. When I got into a good college, she announced she was applying to 10 better ones. When I bought my first home, she insisted on a bigger one, even if it meant overextending her finances. When I got a promotion, she bragged about landing a job with a fancier title, even though it paid less. Her need to one-up me became a rhythm in our family, like background noise we all pretended not to hear. But what I did not realize then, what I only understand now, is that Brianna never saw me as her cousin. She saw me as her measuring stick. A mirror that reminded her of everything she feared she was not, and every time that mirror reflected back something she disliked, she blamed me. Things escalated 2 years before the wedding. At a Thanksgiving dinner, Brianna accused me of trying to embarrass her in front of her then-boyfriend, Henry, just because I complimented her centerpieces. That night, she cornered me in the hallway, drunk, her voice slurred as she hissed, "You always think you're better. You always try to take what's mine." I walked away thinking she was just emotional, but the truth is she had already built a version of me in her mind, a villain, a rival, an enemy who existed only in her insecurities. The family dynamic worsened that year. Veronica grew sharper in her comments. Daniel the father grew quieter, shrinking into himself because he knew challenging his wife and daughter meant war. My mother tried to keep peace, pleading with me to stay patient, to understand that some people are just high-strung. But there is a difference between high-strung and hateful, and the Coles had crossed that line long before any of us wanted to admit it. Still, I attended birthdays, holidays, baby showers, and Sunday dinners because I believed that family deserved effort. I believed that blood meant something. I believed that if I was kind enough, considerate enough, patient enough, maybe they would leave me in peace. I was wrong. The wedding invitation came in a thick ivory envelope with gold lettering and a dress code that felt more like a warning than a suggestion. And as I held it, I felt the faintest chill run through my chest, a whisper of intuition telling me that whatever resentment Brianna carried had not faded. It had matured, hardened, evolved into something darker, something dangerous, something that would try to end me. The week the wedding invitation arrived, I told myself I was overthinking, that the cold knot in my stomach was just leftover anxiety from years of subtle cruelty. But deep down, I knew better. Toxic people do not soften over time. They sharpen. The invitation itself was beautiful, heavy ivory cardstock with embossed lettering and a wax seal featuring Brianna's initials like she was some kind of royalty. Inside it dictated a dress code more rigid than any I had ever seen. Fall colors only, it said. No black, no white, no pastels, no bright colors, no metallics, no sequins, no patterns, no lace. No beads. The list went on as if the entire point of the wedding was to police what everyone else wore, rather than celebrate love. My mother tried to laugh it off, saying, "Oh, Brianna always was particular." Particular was too gentle a word. Controlling was closer. And yet, 2 days later, my phone lit up with a message from Brianna herself. Don't wear anything tight. Don't wear anything low cut. Don't wear anything with shimmer. And definitely nothing burgundy. It washes you out. I stared at the message, wondering how someone could contradict their own dress code and still say it with absolute confidence. I typed back a simple, "Sure thing," Brianna, and tried to shake it off, but she wasn't finished. A minute later, she sent another message. "Actually wear burgundy. It matches the theme." I blinked. She had just told me not to wear burgundy, and now she insisted I must. It felt like a trap, but refusing would create drama, and giving in might keep the peace, or so I thought. My younger brother Ethan noticed my hesitation at dinner that night. "What's wrong?" he asked when he saw me staring at the invitation. I sighed and handed him my phone. He read the messages, then looked up slowly. "Lena, don't go. She's baiting you." I forced a smile, even though my chest tightened. "She's a bride. Brides get stressed." Ethan leaned forward, his face losing its usual warmth, replaced by a seriousness I rarely saw. "Stressed is one thing, Lena, but she's obsessed with you, and Mom won't admit it." He was right, and we both knew it. Still, I convinced myself that refusing to attend would only fuel the narrative Brianna had built for years, that I thought I was above the family, that I was trying to hurt her. So I searched for a burgundy dress that fit her impossible rules and found one, simple, elegant, modest, exactly what she demanded. When I tried it on the mirror, showed a version of myself I hadn't seen in a long time. I looked confident, comfortable, strong, but as quickly as the pride came, it vanished, replaced by unease. Brianna always found a reason to hate me. Why would this be different? The day before the wedding, she sent one more message out of nowhere. Don't try to stand out, and don't embarrass me. The words hit harder than they should have because they carried every insult, every whisper, every glare from the last 15 years condensed into one warning. I typed back, "Just here to celebrate your day." She replied with a single thumbs up. My mother noticed my silence that evening as we packed for the drive. "Lena, it will be fine," she said, forcing optimism into her voice. Weddings bring out emotions. Try to be understanding. Understanding. I had been understanding my entire life. Understanding while they mocked me. Understanding while they devalued me. Understanding. While Brianna found new angles to attack me from jealousy, insecurity, resentment, territory she never admitted but always acted on. Yet I still nodded, kissed my mother on the cheek, and told her I would be on my best behavior. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a whisper returned darker, heavier than before. This wedding will not end the way you expect. I pushed it aside, packed the burgundy dress, and tried to convince myself that attending was the right choice. But as I folded the fabric and laid it gently into my suitcase, I felt a strange chill settle over me. A calm before a storm. A warning I should have listened to, because that dress, the one she insisted I wear, would become the very reason she tried to kill me. The morning of the wedding felt too bright, too quiet, too clean for what was waiting on the other side of the day, and yet everything around me hummed with a sense of dread, like the world itself was holding its breath. I slipped into the burgundy dress, carefully smoothing the fabric over my ribs, checking twice that nothing looked too tight, too low, too bold, anything Brianna could twist into an accusation. My mother looked at me with soft, worried eyes and said, "You look beautiful, sweetheart," while Ethan lingered near the doorway, arms crossed, jaw tight like he was preparing for a fight he could not yet see. The drive to the venue was 2 hours of heavy silence, broken only by the sound of tires on asphalt and my mother's attempts to fill the air with hopeful chatter about flowers and vows and family. But even she could not hide the tremble in her voice. The moment we arrived, I felt the atmosphere shift. The Cole estate was grand, sprawling with stone pillars and immaculate gardens, but the beauty of it was undercut by a tension that hung in the air like humidity before a storm. Guests mingled near the ceremony arch, their smiles wide but their eyes sharp, flicking toward me with curiosity and something colder, almost like recognition, as if rumors had already begun to spread long before I stepped out of the car. Veronica, the mother of the bride, spotted us and her expression tightened instantly, the corners of her mouth lifting into a smile that never reached her eyes. "Lena," she said in a voice coated with honey and venom, "you made it." I forced a polite nod, though Ethan shifted closer to me instinctively. As we walked past her, I heard her mutter under her breath, "Some people do not understand subtlety." I pretended not to hear, but the words lodged in my chest like a splinter. We took our seats, and the ceremony began, soft music drifting across the garden as the bridal party walked down the aisle. Then Brianna appeared, and the crowd erupted in whispers of admiration. She looked radiant in her fitted lace gown veil flowing behind her like a river of light, but even from a distance I could see it, the flicker in her eyes the instant she caught sight of me sitting quietly in my modest burgundy dress. Her smile faltered for half a second, then snapped back into place, but the damage was done. A chill ran through me. The ceremony continued, but I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched, observed, measured. Brianna's gaze kept drifting back to me sharp and assessing, as if she was waiting for an excuse to ignite the fuse she had been hiding for years. When Henry the groom took her hand, she leaned toward him and whispered something. He glanced at me briefly, his expression unreadable, but it made my stomach twist. The vows ended, the kiss was exchanged, and everyone applauded, but something about the applause felt hollow, brittle, like glass ready to shatter. As guests moved toward the reception hall, I walked with my mother and Ethan trying to blend into the crowd, but whispers trailed behind me like debris in a wake. "Is that her?" someone murmured. "I expected more," another voice added. "Does she really think she belongs here?" Someone else said with a sharp laugh. Ethan heard them too, and his jaw clenched so hard I thought he would break a tooth. "Lena, we can leave," he whispered, but I shook my head, knowing that leaving early would only give Brianna more ammunition. Inside the reception hall, golden lights cast a warm glow over tables overflowing with flowers and candles. Music played, guests chatted. Laughter echoed through the space, but beneath it all was a layer of charged static as if the room itself sensed what was coming. I scanned the crowd and saw Brianna watching me again, expression tight controlled, barely hiding the storm brewing beneath her perfect bridal facade. Her steps were measured as she moved through the crowd, but her eyes were locked on me, and for the first time that day, I saw it without denial, without excuses, without pretending. There was nothing bridal in her expression. No joy, no excitement, no love. Only calculation, only resentment, only the quiet beginning of violence. The reception hall glowed with golden lights and soft music. But for me, the room felt like a stage where every person had been given a script except me. I tried to stay close to my mother and Ethan, but people moved like currents around us, pulling us apart, until I found myself standing alone near the edge of the room, scanning for a familiar face. I spotted Brianna across the hall, surrounded by bridesmaids and relatives, all beaming at her radiant newlywed glow. But her eyes were not glowing. They were locked on me with a sharpness that made my skin prickle, and in that moment, I knew she had been waiting for this part of the day, the moment she could drop the pretense and strike. I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, to focus on the celebration like a normal guest, but the tension pressed against me like invisible hands. I approached Henry the groom out of politeness, offering a simple, "Congratulations, you both look beautiful tonight." He smiled a little too widely and said, "Thank you, Lena," but there was something in his voice that sounded rehearsed and brittle, like he had been warned about me. Before I could respond, Brianna appeared between us so fast it felt like she materialized out of thin air. Her smile was stretched tight, the kind of smile that hurts to hold. "Can I speak to you privately?" she whispered, her voice sweet on the surface but trembling underneath. It was not a request. It was a command. The kind that promised consequences if ignored. Ethan saw her approach and immediately began walking toward us, but I shook my head, signaling that I would handle it, that everything was fine, even though my stomach twisted painfully, 'cause I knew nothing about this was fine. Brianna grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to warn, and led me down a narrow hallway behind the bar, passing through a set of double doors guests rarely noticed. As soon as the doors closed, the music from the reception faded into muffled vibrations, and the hallway felt colder, darker, isolated, like a world separate from the celebration everyone else was enjoying. Brianna spun around, her smile dropping instantly, revealing the storm beneath. "You actually wore that!" She hissed, eyes scanning me from head to toe as if she were assessing an enemy on the battlefield. "You really thought you could show up here looking like that?" I blinked, confused. "Like what?" I whispered. Like a woman desperate for attention, she snapped, voice rising with every word. "Do you have any idea how pathetic you look? Everyone is talking about you. They are laughing at you. They are wondering why you would try to outshine me on my wedding day." There it was, the accusation I had felt brewing since I walked into the venue, sharp and irrational. I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. "Brianna, I am not trying to outshine you. You told me to wear burgundy. I did exactly what you asked." Her expression twisted. "Do not lie to me. You wore that because you want eyes on you. You always have. You always think you are better than me. Always." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure, but my heart thudded painfully against my ribs. "That is not true, Brianna. I came here to support you." That one sentence made her explode. "Support me!" she spat, stepping closer, her face only inches from mine. "You embarrass me just by existing. You take up space you do not deserve. You have never once let me have my moment without trying to steal it." My breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" Brianna jabbed her finger into my chest, her nails sharp against my skin. "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Lena. You think you are subtle. You think you can hide it. You want what I have. You want who I have." I felt a chill slide down my spine. This was beyond jealousy. This was obsession. Delusion, something darker than the petty rivalry I had grown up with. That was when I noticed the hallway camera above us, its tiny red light blinking, and I took a step back, realizing that she had chosen this hallway for a reason. The storage room door behind her was slightly ajar, and the moment her eyes flicked toward it, I understood. Whatever she planned next was going to happen in there. The moment Brianna's eyes darted toward the half-open storage room door, something inside me tightened like a warning pulled straight from my spine. Every instinct screamed to step back, to run, to call for Ethan, to do anything except follow her into that room. But she moved first, gripping my wrist with a force that stripped away any illusion of bridal grace. Her nails dug into my skin as she yanked me toward the door, muttering under her breath through clenched teeth, "You are going to listen for once in your life." Before I could protest, she shoved me inside the storage room, and the door slammed shut behind us, plunging the space into a dim yellow glow from a single flickering bulb. The air smelled of old wood cleaning supplies and stale alcohol. Boxes were stacked unevenly against the walls, bottles lined the shelves, and a mop bucket sat overturned in the corner. I backed away from her, my pulse hammering in my ears. "Brianna, what is this?" She stepped forward slowly, methodically, the train of her wedding gown dragging along the dusty floor, her veil trembling with her breathing. "You think you can walk into my wedding wearing that and pretend you are innocent? You think you can stand near my husband with that smug face?" My voice cracked. I barely spoke to Henry. I congratulated him. That is it. But she was beyond reason, her pupils blown wide, her chest rising and falling in quick, furious gasps, like a predator who had already decided its kill. "Do you know what Melissa told me?" She said, her tone icy calm suddenly. "She told me she saw Henry glance at you. She told me he noticed the dress. That was all it took to light the fuse." I opened my mouth, but before I could form a word, she lunged. Her hand shot forward, grabbing a fistful of my hair and wrenching my head back so violently, a sharp cry tore from my throat. "You made him look at you!" she screamed, the veins in her neck bulging with rage. "You always do this. You take attention that is not yours." I clawed at her hand, trying to free myself, but she slammed me backward into a shelf of bottles, the impact rattling through my skull as glass clinked ominously above me. "Brianna, stop. Please listen to yourself." The plea only fueled her. She slapped me hard across the face, the crack of skin on skin echoing through the cramped room. The sting radiated outwards my cheek, burning my vision blurring. She hit me again, this time with the back of her hand, the blow splitting my lip and sending a metallic taste flooding my mouth. I stumbled, but she grabbed my shoulders and shoved me to the floor, my knees hitting the concrete with a jolt of pain. I heard the scrape of her heel against the ground as she stepped closer. "You ruin everything," she snarled. "You ruined Thanksgiving. You ruined my engagement dinner. You ruined every moment that should have been mine." I blinked through tears, dazed, trying to piece together what she was talking about. She was rewriting history, turning every imagined slight into motive for violence. "Brianna," I whispered, shaking, "I have never tried to take anything from you." Her eyes glinted with something feral. "Liar!" She grabbed a bottle of champagne from the shelf, the thick green glass catching the dim light. For a moment, she just stared at it, weighing it in her hand like she was deciding how much damage she wanted to inflict. Then she swung. The bottle crashed into my shoulder with a sickening, dull thud that sent fire shooting through my arm. I cried out, collapsing sideways onto the floor. Pain radiated down my back and across my ribs. She raised the bottle again, and instinct forced me to roll, but she still caught the edge of my arm, the impact snapping through bone and muscle like lightning. I gasped for breath, unable to inhale fully as the air punched out of my lungs. She towered over me, chest heaving, grip tightening around the bottleneck. She looked like a bride, possessed veil, crooked makeup, smeared the embodiment of every suppressed grudge that had fermented into something violent. A sound left her throat, half scream, half sob. "I should have done this years ago." She lifted the bottle a third time, and for the first time that night, I understood with absolute clarity. Brianna was not trying to scare me. She was trying to end me. I scrambled backward on the concrete floor, my palms slipping in a mix of dust and my own blood as Brianna raised the champagne bottle again, her breath ragged, her eyes wild with a fury that made her look almost unrecognizable. The flickering bulb above us cast jagged shadows across her face, twisting her expression into something monstrous, something hungry for destruction. "Please, Brianna, stop!" I begged, my voice shaking uncontrollably, but she only laughed, a short, broken sound that cut straight through me. "You always beg at this last minute," she said, stepping closer, her veil dragging behind her like a wounded creature. "Always so pathetic." I pushed myself up to sit, but the pain shot through my shoulder, blinding and sharp, forcing me to gasp. She swung the bottles down again, but this time I threw my arm up in desperation, and the glass shattered against my forearm, sending shards exploding across the room like tiny stars of glass. A searing pain tore through my skin as fragments embedded into my flesh, but the bottle was now just a jagged stump in her hand. She stared at it, breathing hard, then stared back at me with something far darker than rage. Contempt. She tossed the broken neck aside, letting it clatter against the wall, and before I could move, she grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked me upright. Pain shot through my skull and my knees buckled, but she held on her grip iron tight. "You think I don't know what people say about us?" she hissed, pulling my face close to hers. "That you are the pretty one, the smart one, the one with a future." "You make me look small, Lena." "You always have." My voice trembled. "That is not true, Brianna." "It never was." She slammed my head backward into the metal shelf, and bright light burst behind my eyes, my vision swimming as the world tilted off balance. I slumped toward the floor, dazed, but she did not give me time to recover. She kicked me in the ribs once, twice, 3 times, each blow driving the air from my lungs until I was choking, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to do anything but curl inwards, hoping it would stop. But it didn't. She crouched beside me, grabbing my chin, forcing my gaze up to hers. "You look at me," she said, her voice low, trembling with a dangerous edge. "You look at me while I take back everything you stole." "Brianna," I whispered, barely able to form the words. "I never stole anything from you." She slapped me again, her nails scraping my cheek, splitting the skin. "Shut up. You make my husband look at you. You make my parents compare us. You make everyone wonder why you have the life I deserve." "Deserve?" The word echoed inside my skull, heavy and sharp. She believed this. She truly believed this. And in that moment, I realized that nothing I had ever done or said would have mattered. She had built a world in her mind where I was the villain and she was the victim fighting for her rightful place. She stood up suddenly, breathing hard like she was gathering strength for another strike. Then her foot hooked around the mop bucket on the floor and she kicked it toward me with violent force. The metal rim crashed into my side, and I cried out, the breath ripped from my throat as another wave of agony spread across my ribs. I tried to roll away, but she was faster, grabbing me by the back of my dress and dragging me across the floor toward the corner where a wooden table sat with sharp edges worn down by years of use. When she shoved me, my head collided with the corner, the impact sickening and brutal. A warm rush spread down my temple and the world dimmed again, edges blurring as if someone smeared the room with a wet brush. Brianna loomed above me, chest-heaving hair falling from its pin's veil, torn and twisted. She looked less like a bride and more like a specter born from every grudge she had ever nurtured. "If you tell anyone about this," she whispered, "I will say you attacked me first. No one will believe you. They never do." My limbs felt heavy, trembling uncontrollably, my breath shallow, my pulse faint. And as darkness began to swallow the edges of my vision, she stepped back, staring down at me with cold calculation. Then she walked toward the door, turned the lock, and said quietly, "Let her bleed for a bit. I need to fix my makeup." The last thing I saw before my eyes closed was her white dress disappearing through the crack of the door, leaving me alone, broken and slipping toward death. Silence settled over the storage room after Brianna left, a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the faint thump of music and laughter leaking in from the reception hall beyond the door. Life continued just a few feet away while mine bled out on cold concrete. I tried to lift my hand, but it felt like lifting stone. My fingers barely moved, twitching weakly against the floor. Warm blood trickled down my face, collecting near my ear. My vision pulsed in and out like fading radio static. Every breath rattled in my chest, tight and painful, like my ribs were grinding against one another. I tried to call out, but only a faint rasp escaped my throat, barely louder than a whisper. No one would hear that. No one would hear me. A wave of panic rolled through me, a primal terror unlike anything I had ever felt. The realization settled like ice. I might die here. I might die on the floor of a storage room in the middle of my cousin's wedding, and no one would even know until it was far too late. I thought of my mother in her seat smiling at the ceremony. I thought of Ethan always watching over me, always telling me to be careful around the coals. I thought of all the moments I brushed off, sensed something wrong, but tried to maintain peace instead. That instinct to keep peace was killing me now. My eyelids grew heavier with each passing second. A strange numbness crept up my legs, then my chest, then my arms, like my body was shutting down one piece at a time. I fought to stay awake, fought with everything I had left. but consciousness slipped like sand through my fingers. Somewhere in the haze, I heard footsteps pounding down the hallway. At first, it sounded like a dream, but they grew louder, faster, more frantic. Then a voice that cut through the fog. Lena, where are you? Ethan's voice, my brother's voice. Light flooded the bottom edge of the door as someone rattled the knob. Locked, Ethan shouted. I could faintly hear him hitting the door with his shoulder. Then another voice joined his one, crisp, sharp, filled with authority. Step back, sir. We will handle this. It was a police officer. Later, I would learn that Ethan had grown alarmed when I did not return from the restroom. He searched the hallways, calling my name until he heard something very faint, barely audible, a soft, dragging exhale. My breath. He followed the sound and saw a smear of blood on the doorknob. He called the police immediately, unable to force the door, but refusing to leave until they arrived. Another crash shook the door, then another louder. The officers worked together, ramming their shoulders against the wood. The frame cracked. With a final slam, the door burst open, slamming against the wall. Lights flooded the room sharp and bright. Shadows scattered. Officer Grant moved first, sprinting toward me, dropping to his knees beside my body. Oh my God, he muttered, barely audible. She's critical. He pressed gloved fingers against my neck, searching for a pulse. I felt pressure but no pain, my body too far gone to register anything clearly. He leaned in close. Ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am, open your eyes. Stay with me. Do not go to sleep. His voice trembled slightly, though he tried to mask it. He tapped his radio, speaking quickly. Medic needed immediately. Severe head trauma, possible. Internal bleeding. Shallow breathing. Condition declining fast. The second officer surveyed the scene glass blood shards, a smeared boot print on the floor, and the torn fabric of my dress scattered like debris. This wasn't an accident, he said. No damn way. Ethan rushed forward, but Officer Grant extended an arm to stop him. You cannot touch her. She is barely stable. Just talk to her. Keep her awake. Ethan fell to his knees beside me, tears streaming down his face. Lena, please, sis, look at me. You have to stay awake. His voice cracked on the last word. I tried to speak, tried to say his name, but only a tiny tremor escaped. Officer Grant leaned closer, his expression tightening. She is fading. Move. Now. A medic team burst through the doorway, rolling a stretcher. Their hands moved fast, stabilizing my neck, checking my airway, shining a penlight into my unresponsive eyes. One medic exhaled hard. She has maybe seconds. Maybe. And with those words, the world around me began to dissolve again, slipping into darkness as if I were being pulled underwater. But this time, I was not alone in the dark. Voices fought for me. Hands worked to save me. Someone had come. Someone had found me before it was too late. The first thing I felt when consciousness clawed its way back into my body was pain. A deep, crushing pain that wrapped around my skull and ribs like iron bands, squeezing until I could barely breathe. The second thing I felt was light, a harsh fluorescent glare stabbing through my closed eyelids, forcing me to flinch. A soft beep, beep, beep echoed beside me, steady, rhythmic like a metronome counting my return from the edge. Then came the voices, low, urgent, drifting in and out like waves. She's waking up. Get the doctor. I tried to open my eyes, but the world blurred into streaks of white and gray. My throat burned raw, every swallow scraping like sandpaper. A warm hand wrapped around mine, and I knew instantly whose it was. Ethan. Hey, sis, it's okay, you're safe now. Safe. The word felt foreign, distant, impossible. My memory splintered into fragments. The storage room, the bottle, the kick, the corner of the table, the cold concrete. Then Brianna's face contorted with hatred came rushing back, and panic surged through my chest. My body jerked involuntarily, monitors spiking. Easy, Lena, easy, Ethan whispered, squeezing my hand. You're in the hospital. You made it. You're alive. Tears stung the corners of my eyes as I slowly turned my head, ignoring the sharp pain that radiated down my neck. My mother's face came into view, pale, streaked with tears, eyes swollen from crying all night. When she saw my eyes open, she pressed a shaking hand to her mouth before leaning in to kiss my forehead so gently it barely registered. My baby, she whispered, voice quivering. Thank God you came back to us. The doctor stepped into my line of sight, a tall man with kind eyes and a grave expression. Lena, Dr. Hayes. You've suffered a severe concussion, multiple facial lacerations, 2 fractured ribs, and significant blood loss. You were minutes from cardiac arrest when you arrived. His voice softened as he added, if the officers had been 30 seconds later, we would be having a very different conversation. 30 seconds. The number echoed inside me like a stone dropped into water, sending ripples through everything I thought I understood about that night. My lips moved the words scraping out as a painful whisper. My cousin. The doctor paused, glancing at my mother and Ethan. You don't have to talk yet, he said gently, but I shook my head, ignoring the pounding in my skull. She did this. Brianna. My mother closed her eyes in anguish, her fingers tightening around the blanket near my arm. Ethan looked away, jaw clenched so hard I thought he might break a tooth. The doctor nodded slowly. The police are aware of your statement. Detective North has been waiting to speak with you, but only when you are strong enough. She has questions. And evidence. Evidence. The word cut through the fog in my mind. I forced air into my lungs and whispered, what evidence? Ethan leaned in, his voice low, careful, like he was trying not to startle me. There were cameras in the hallway outside the storage room. They saw her pull you in. They saw her bridesmaids guarding the door. And Lena. He hesitated, eyes glistening. The room was a mess. Blood everywhere. Glass broke in your hair on the floor. They know you didn't fall. You didn't slip. Someone hurt you. Hard. My chest tightened and I felt tears roll sideways into my hairline. Hearing it confirmed broke something loose inside me, a mixture of grief, relief, and shock, twisting into a knot I couldn't untangle. My mother brushed the tears away, murmuring, "Shh, you are safe now. No one will hurt you again." But fear lingered sharp and cold, and then another thought struck me, slicing through everything else. Where is she? My voice cracked. Where is Brianna? Ethan exchanged a look with Mom before answering. She is pretending nothing happened. She's telling everyone you attacked her first. That you ruined her wedding. That she's the victim. My stomach turned. Of course she was. That was her pattern, her entire life. Rewrite reality, shape the story. Blame me until she believed her own lies. The doctor stepped back as the door opened and a woman in a dark blazer entered, carrying a folder. Detective Valerie North. Calm, sharp eyes, firm posture. She approached my bedside and spoke gently but with unmistakable resolve. Lena, I know this is difficult, but I need to hear what happened in your own words. And I need you to know something before you start. She placed a photo on the table beside me. It showed the storage room exactly as they found it. Blood smeared, floor cracked, bottle glass scattered, my dress torn, and in the corner, a perfect imprint of the table edge soaked with red. Detective North lowered her voice. What happened to you was not an accident, and we will get the truth. Detective Valerie North pulled a chair beside my hospital bed, her movements controlled precise, the way someone moves when they know every detail matters. She opened her folder, revealing printed stills from security footage, each image a frozen moment of the nightmare I had lived through. Lena, she said softly, I want you to take your time, but I need you to help me connect what we already know with what only you can tell me. My pulse quickened as she slid the first photo toward me. It showed Brianna gripping my wrist in the hallway, her face twisted with something darker than irritation. The next still showed her pulling me toward the storage room door. The third image captured the bridesmaids, Kendra and Melissa, stationed on either side like silent guards, their expressions tight, their bodies angled away as if trying to deny their involvement. Detective North continued, These images alone are enough to prove you were not the aggressor. But what happened inside the room we only know through the aftermath. Take your time. Tell me what you remember. So I did. My voice shook. My breaths came uneven, but I forced myself to speak the words, peeling out like raw layers from a wound. I told her about the shouting, the accusations, the first blow, then the second, then the bottle, the kicks, the head strike, the moment the world began to dim. I told her the exact words Brianna said when she called me pathetic, when she said she should have done this years ago, when she told her bridesmaids not to open the door, no matter what they heard. Detective North didn't interrupt. She just nodded, taking notes, marking details, her face, a careful balance of empathy and anger restrained by professionalism. When I finished, she closed her notebook slowly. Thank you, Lena. What you survived was attempted homicide, not an assault, not a heat-of-the-moment fight. This was intentional, calculated. My stomach twisted hearing the words spoken aloud in such stark terms. Attempted homicide. She continued, We already interviewed Melissa. She broke within minutes. She said Brianna told her to guard the door, that you provoked her, that you tried to make a scene. But when we asked her why she didn't go inside when she heard something break, she panicked. She admitted she heard you scream. She admitted Brianna told her you didn't hear anything. You don't see anything. My mother gasped quietly, pressing her hands to her mouth. Ethan swore under his breath, standing taller as though preparing to defend me all over again. Detective North pulled out another paper this time, a printed transcript. We confiscated bridal party group messages. Brianna texted them hours before the ceremony. Listen to this. Keep your eyes on Lena. She always pulls something. If she tries anything, I will take care of it. If I pull her aside, stay out of it. She thinks she can embarrass me on my day. Not happening. My throat closed. She had planned it. Not the exact moment, not the exact blows, but the intent, the confrontation, the isolation, the punishment. She planned to trap me one way or another. Detective North wasn't finished. Then there's Henry. She flipped the page and I braced myself. Henry claimed he barely interacted with you, but when confronted with the footage of him glancing at you in the reception hall, he said something interesting. She leaned forward, voice steady. He said Brianna has always been afraid of you because she thinks you threaten her place. Not because of anything you did, but because she is insecure. That insecurity turned it into fixation. Fixation turned into volatility. The more he talked, the more apparent it became that he had spent years tolerating Brianna's jealousy but never confronting it. Yet he still tried to defend her, minimizing her actions, calling it stress, blaming alcohol, begging the police to be lenient. Classic enabling behavior disguised as concern. Detective North sighed. When he realized the charges would not go away, he tried a different angle. He said you have always tried to make Brianna look bad. He tried to convince us this was mutual, but the evidence makes that impossible. My mother finally spoke, her voice trembling with controlled rage. So what happens now? Detective North straightened. A warrant is already being processed. Brianna will be arrested. We have enough for felony charges. There will be a trial. And Lena, she paused, letting her words settle. We will not let her rewrite this story. She pulled out one last photo, the blood stain on the floor in the exact shape of where my head had lain, the proof of how close I had come to dying. I stared at it, my breath unsteady. For years, Brianna had tried to convince everyone that I was exaggerating, overly sensitive, trying to make her look bad. But now the truth was laid bare, undeniable, irreversible. And justice had finally stepped into the room. The courthouse felt colder than I expected, not because of the air, but because of the weight of everything that was about to unfold inside its walls. Reporters gathered outside, whispering among themselves, already piecing together the whispers of a bride who assaulted her own cousin on her wedding day. As Ethan wheeled me through the hallway, my ribs still wrapped tightly in bandages, my head tingling where stitches ran beneath my hair, I felt every stare. Some were sympathetic, some curious, some quietly horrified. Let them look. For the first time in my life, their eyes did not make me shrink. They made me stronger. When the courtroom doors opened, I saw her, Brianna, sitting at the defendant table in a pale blue dress, her hair styled perfectly. Makeup flawless as though she had spent hours preparing to play the role of the wounded innocent. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, but her eyes flicked upward when she saw me, and for a brief second, something ugly flashed across her face before she masked it with a trembling lip. She whispered something to Henry, who sat stiffly beside her, clearly instructed to look equally devastated and supportive. On the opposite side of the room sat her bridesmaids. Melissa stared at the floor, twisting a tissue between her fingers. Kendra looked irritated, like this courtroom was merely an inconvenience. My mother squeezed my hand as Ethan parked my wheelchair beside our attorney. Lena, she murmured, no matter what she says, remember what we know. Remember the truth. Then the judge entered and the trial began. The prosecution moved first, presenting photos of my injuries, the footage of Brianna pulling me inside the storage room, the screenshots of her group chat messages. Every piece landed with the force of a hammer. When they called Detective North to the stand, her testimony cut through the air like a blade. Based on the scene, the pattern of injuries, and the witness accounts, it is the professional opinion of law enforcement that the attack was intentional, targeted, and prolonged. She pointed to one photograph. This blood pattern indicates the victim was struck repeatedly while already on the ground. Mild gasps echoed through the room. Brianna shifted in her seat, eyes darting back and forth as if her world had begun to wobble. Then it was my turn. A court assistant swore me in, and I steadied my breath. My voice trembled on the first sentence, but grew steadier as I told them everything. The accusations, the blows, the bottle, the kicks, her words. The moment she told her bridesmaids to ignore my screams, as I spoke, I watched Brianna. Her expression shifted from feigned sorrow to tight-jawed annoyance, then to barely concealed rage. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Then the defense rose. Brianna's attorney approached with a sympathetic smile, the kind people use when they want to manipulate you. Miss Cole, he began, voice smooth. Isn't it true that you and Brianna have a long history of tension? No. Isn't it true that you often compete for attention in the family? No. Isn't it true that you were jealous of her wedding and tried to provoke her? Absolutely not. He exhaled loudly as if disappointed, then delivered his rehearsed blow. Miss Cole, how can you be sure you remember the event clearly if you suffered a head injury? Brianna sniffed loudly, wiping a fake tear and lowering her gaze. It was all theater. But before the attorney could continue, the judge cut in sharply. Counsel, the security footage your client refuses to acknowledge shows her pulling the victim inside the room before the head injury occurred. The defense froze. The judge continued. So, unless you are implying Miss Cole believes she was attacked before evidence shows otherwise, I suggest you move on. A faint ripple of shock spread through the courtroom. Ethan squeezed my shoulder subtly behind me. The defense finally called Brianna to the stand. She walked up slowly, shoulders shaking, lower lip trembling. And then the performance began. I was scared, she said, voice breaking. She was angry with me. She rushed me. I swung because I panicked. It was self-defense. A murmur rippled across the audience, but Detective North stood abruptly. Permission to present supplemental footage, Your Honor. Granted. A new angle appeared on the screen showing Melissa at the door, her face pressed to a crack, smiling. The audio picked up just enough to catch her faint whisper. She is still alive. Brianna won't stop until she is done. The courtroom erupted. The judge slammed her gavel, demanding silence, but the shock had already detonated. Brianna went pale, gripping the stand so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her attorney sank into his seat defeated, and I watched as the mask she had worn for years finally cracked. Justice had arrived. The courtroom air felt different after the supplemental footage played heavier, more decisive, as though the entire room collectively understood that the performance was over and the truth was no longer something anyone could twist. Brianna's face had drained of all color, her posture collapsing inch by inch, as if the weight of reality was finally too much for her to hold. When the judge called for order, it took nearly a full minute before the murmurs died down. The jury returned 20 minutes later, their expressions solemn. The foreperson stood hands steady, voice clear. We, the jury, find the defendant, Brianna Cole, guilty on all counts, including felony assault battery with intent to cause great bodily harm and attempted homicide. The words attempted homicide hung in the air like a bell toll. Brianna's mouth fell open. She shook her head, whispering something over and over. No, no, no. Henry reached for her, but she yanked her hand away, still refusing to face him. The judge's gavel struck once. Sentencing will proceed immediately. Given the severity of the attack, the lack of remorse, and the deliberate nature of the crime, Brianna Cole is hereby sentenced to 16 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for the first 12 years. The sound that came from Brianna was not a scream, not a sob, but something caught between both, a raw, jagged sound of disbelief and panic. She collapsed into the chair, shaking violently. Henry stared at her, his face pale as though he had finally seen the woman he married without the mask she had worn for so long. Melissa and Kendra sat frozen, Melissa silently crying, Kendra stiff and unmoving. Officers approached and escorted Brianna to her feet, placing cuffs around her wrists. She turned toward me, tears streaking down her cheeks, and for a moment there was no fury left. Only a hollow, broken recognition. You ruined my life, she whispered, voice barely audible. I wanted to answer, but Ethan spoke before I could, his voice calm and steady. She ruined her own life, and she almost took mine. The officers pulled her away, and the door closed behind her. The echo of it felt like the closing of a chapter I had been trapped inside for years. Later that evening, I stepped outside the courthouse, leaning heavily on Ethan as I breathed in the cool evening air. Reporters called my name, flashlights popping questions flying around me, but for the first time in months, I did not feel hunted. I felt free. Mom wrapped an arm around me, tears glistening in her eyes. It's over, sweetheart. She's gone. But she wasn't entirely gone. Not yet. I still had healing to do. I still had nightmares to fight. But she could no longer touch me, no longer twist my words, no longer enter my home, no longer hold power over the story of my life. A week later, I received an unexpected letter from Henry. His handwriting looked shaky, corners smudged, like he had rewritten it several times. He apologized for defending Brianna, for ignoring the signs, for enabling her jealousy, for not stepping in when he saw things spiraling. He told me he was filing for annulment and entering therapy. I didn't know if I forgave him, but I believed him, and that was enough for now. In the months that followed, I focused on healing, physical therapy for my ribs, counseling for the trauma. Ethan attended every session, sitting quietly in the waiting room just to make sure I never felt alone again. Mom cooked dinners, stayed overnight, kept watch when the nightmares hit. And slowly, inch by inch, breath by breath, the weight in my chest began to lift. 6 months later, I returned to the storage room. The venue owner met me at the doorway, offering to walk me inside, but I shook my head. I stepped in alone. The room was clean now, repainted floors, polished shelves replaced, but memory is stubborn. My hands shook as I stood where I had fallen. I whispered not to Brianna, not to the darkness, but to myself. You survived. You came back. You fought. When I stepped outside again, the sun hit my face warm, soft, steady. It felt like a promise. From that day forward, I made a vow. No more silence. No more shrinking. No more letting someone else decide who I am. The world may never remember Brianna's wedding day, but I will always remember the day I chose myself and lived